In this exciting episode, we get lots of skirt and very little singing. You'd think this episode would be perfect for a song and dance number, so color me surprised when I found out that actress Joan O'Brien, our defendant, actually could sing. You wouldn't know it from Perry Mason Season 3, Episode 18, The Case of the Singing Skirt. Welcome to the Perry Pod. I'm your humble host, Jonathan Searcy. My purpose here, pretty simple: provide an audio companion to the greatest legal drama in television history, Perry Mason. I plan to do an episode of every episode of the television series, and as time permits, I'll get to some of those made-for-TV movies too. I'll be working through the series in the order in which the episodes were aired. Every episode, I give you a brief refresher on the plot and compare it with the Earl Stanley Gardner novel it was adapted from. Next, I list some key pieces of trivia before I tackle the episode's theme. Then we feature a Perry Proverb, a pearl of wisdom from the man himself, before we head to the post-case water cooler where, just like Perry, Della, and Paul, we can discuss the ins and outs of their adventures. But first, to the law library. Each episode in the Law Library, we investigate some legal conundrum in the episode so we can find fresh precedents for future cases. This episode, we get pretty deep in the weeds of the Law Library as we investigate a little recognized appellate court ruling on community property. Here's the deal. Manning Ennis lose $60,000 in a poker game at the Big Barn in Rowena, California. His wife, obviously upset. Her financial advisor, one William Gowrie, kind of her wannabe paramour too, dials up Perry and asks Perry to have his client testify that something was up with the game. Then Perry lobs this legal hand grenade into the foxholes of unscrupulous gamblers everywhere.
Novo versus Hotel Del Rio, May 4th, 1956. An appellate court held that a husband has no right to gamble with the community property. The wife can follow the community funds and recover them from the gambler who won them.
Wait a minute. Wait just a minute. Where can I find all that?
Tell your lawyer to look in 141 California Appellate, second at page 304.
Little bit of background. Since an 1853 ruling, the state of California has denied recovery for money lost at gaming. But then in 1956, an appellate court heard a wife's case against a hotel scion when her husband lost a little over $7,000 in a 6-hour draw poker game. And the court ruled that if the cash was part of community property, the wife could get it back. Uh-oh. The far-reaching legal implications of a wife being able to get back her deadbeat husband's gambling cash, that's sure to put the fear of God into the heart of every gambling joint operator. I can't see where this Novo decision got overturned, but of course there was a higher court that could set another precedent. Fun fact, guess who was defending the Hotel Del Rio in the case? That would be Anthony J. Kennedy, the father of future Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy. Quick, let's get to the plot of the episode before things get even more complicated. The Case of the Singing Skirt. Mamas, tell your daughters and sons to go to bed early because George Anclitus is back in town.
Here's your change, Mr. Anclitus. Give it!
I'll get your bags out of the taxi, Mr. Anclitus. I'll take care of everything, sir.
Now, don't you waste your time on me, Sonny. Save it for the paying customers.
Oh, thank you, sir. And welcome back. Welcome back to Rowena.
Anclitus runs the Big Barn in Rowena, California, where gambling is legal. And when Anclitus shows up after a few weeks' absence, some poor dope is losing his shirt, while Betty Roberts, our titular singing skirt, watches on in horror.
All right, Mr. Marcus, I call you. 2 kings. That's it, gorgeous. Just lead me quietly away to the fountain pen.
I'm sorry, Manny.
Better luck next time, sir.
$60,000. Eesh. Then we see the real side of George, Big Barn, and Clytus when he doesn't get Betty's full cooperation.
But you do know I like everyone to be very happy.
Please, Mr. Clytus.
Well, that goes for me, too. So now, how did it happen? Sing a little.
Well, Mrs. Ennis, the wife of the poor dope who lost the $60K, is hopping mad. Betty, she's scared, so she goes to Perry, and that's when William Gowrie calls, and Perry pulls that obscure appellate decision out of his back pocket. Things get really weird when Betty reveals that a gun's been planted on her, and Perry starts playing fast and loose with evidence. The part of Perry's conscience here is played by the inviolable Della Street.
What are you going to do?
Just don't like to see a little girl being pushed around by a big gambler.
Does that include little girls who tell big stories?
Paul and Perry do some detective work. One, the Big Barn didn't just plant a gun on Betty, they planted dope, too. Two, Perry discovers that George and Clytus and his right-hand man, Slim Marcus, are scared. And three, Betty gets arrested for murder, and somehow the gun Perry planted on her is responsible? How could that be?
It seems they already found the gun they want.
Where?
It's the one they took out of Betty Roberts' hat box at the motel when they picked her up. Remember, you were there.
Well, it just couldn't be. That gun is...
They say it matches with a bullet taken from the body, Perry. So it's got to be the gun that did the killing.
The court case has some twists and turns. Apparently, the deceased was shot twice. Apparently, Slim Marcus and William Gowrie were stepping out with the deceased. Apparently, the fixed card game was stud poker, and the amended 19th century California Penal Code wasn't ready to handle that.
Paul, do you know Section 330 of the State Penal Code?
Huh?
It defines illegal games of chance. When the code was written in 1872, it did not include draw poker. Later, when the code was amended, it did include stud poker. Playing a game of stud poker is a misdemeanor.
By the way, I can confirm that Penal Code 330 in Cali is a real thing. It does deal with gambling, but it's mostly saying you can't play poker as a banking or percentage game, which would seem to exclude the Big Barn from having any poker, not just a certain kind of poker. No legal scholar here. Throw my hands up there. Anywho, the bluster leads to a courtroom flurry where it looks like Perry's going to get caught tampering with evidence before he puts George, Big Barn, and Clytus back on the stand, gets another cigarette girl, Sadie, to spill the beans, and then Slim Marcus confesses murder for fear of his life. Hell hath no fury like a Big Barn operator scorned for $60K.
My business. You ruined my club, my reputation. Get him off of me!
I'll tell everything. Get him away from me. I'll tell you how I killed her.
That's right. Mrs. Ennis was stepping out with Slim. And Perry, well, we can call him a matchmaker because our denouement has him setting up the penniless Ennis with the freed Betty. Run, Betty, run! The novel The Case of the Singing Skirt came out in 1959. It's a pretty good one. Unlike The Case of the Mythical Monkeys, though, we've got some serious differences between the novel and the television adaptation. Let us count the ways. Number one, the names. Our defendant in the novel is Edna Robb, not Betty Roberts. The man she's involved with, Hellman Ellis. Goodbye, Edna. Hello, Betty. Goodbye, Hellman. Hello, Manny. Number two, several circumstances in the novel differ from the television adaptation. One, the wife gets shot on a boat, not killed in the car. Gowrie is an attorney, not a financial advisor. And three, and Clytus also in on the Hellman Ellis fix from the beginning, not just an after-the-fact knower of what Slim Marcus is up to. Number three, Perry's legal know-how digs up the Novo decision, sure, but he also talks about the legal ramifications of shooting an already dead body. Another obscure court case that he dug up. As you can see, that plays a huge part in the crime. It's an overt plot point in the novel. Ultimately, a more important one even than the Novo decision. Number 4, Gardner always likes to have a deep dive into some related topic. In The Mythical Monkeys, it was what made a novel a bestseller. In the case of The Singing Skirt, he considers divorce, the topic of jealous wives, and what makes heels like Hellman Ellis do what they do. Number 5, which leads us to the biggest change. Hellman Ellis, aka the Manning Ennis character, he's the murderer, not Slim Marcus. It's Hellman Ellis who gets the Sadie character to help him frame Edna. So no meets cute at the end of the case for Edna. In fact, Perry is so relieved at having avoided the charge of tampering with evidence, the whole gun swapping fiasco, there's little about Edna at the novel's end. It's another rich one, but one that the TV writers changed significantly. It's most definitely worth checking out. Now, let's get trivial, shall we? Each episode in our trivia section, I give you 3 takeaways. A Paul is a subject worth investigating more. Adela is a deep dive on an actor or actress who appeared in the episode. And a Perry is a key fact about our intrepid hero. Our Paul prompt. Okay, so Rowena, California does not exist. Made for TV. The real analog for this gambling haven is the very real Gardena, California, the township we saw in Season 2's The Case of the Dangerous Dowager. When Perry's working through the genealogy of Penal Code 330, I want to know, was Perry making this part of the Penal Code up? Like, was there an amendment for one kind of poker but not another? And just what is the distinction between the two kinds of poker? Our Della for this episode, none other than Joan O'Brien herself, a.k.a. Betty Roberts, the Singing Skirt.
She hadn't done a thing, and they planted marijuana cigarettes in her room, and even a gun in her purse.
Here's 10 about Joan. 1, born in Cambridge, Mass. in 1936. Her parents relocated to Southern California when she was young. Number 2, she was dancing by age 8, but it was her voice that got her real attention. Number 3, so at age 18, she got herself a recurring run on the Bob Crosby Show. Yep, Bing had a little brother who had a TV run, 1954 to 1958. Here's a clip of Joni O'Brien.
Now, Doug, your mama also tells me that Daddy thinks Joni O'Brien is just a doll. So just for you and just for your daddy, here's Joni to sing a wonderful song, Joni O'Brien.
Saw me crying in the chapel. The tears I shed were tears of joy.
Apparently, Joni garnered more fan mail than Bob himself. Number 4, in 1959, Joan O'Brien starred alongside Tony Curtis and Cary Grant in Operation Petticoat, directed by Blake Edwards. Guess who else was in that film? Madeleine Rue, the sister-in-law from The Case of the Wayward Wife. O'Brien and Rue apparently got on together so well that O'Brien was one of Rue's bridesmaids. Number 5, in 1960, O'Brien was in John Wayne's The Alamo alongside Richard Boone, Richard Widmark, and Lawrence Harvey. This was the same year she was Betty Roberts on Perry. Note, at this point, she was still only 24 years old. Number 6, her film career kept soaring. She starred in films alongside the likes of Audie Murphy, Jerry Lewis, and I'm all shook up Elvis Presley himself with 1963's It Happened at the World's Fair, though she regretted later she didn't get to sing alongside the king. Her last film, 1964's Get Yourself a College Girl, a film that featured musical artists like the Dave Clark Five, the Animals, and Stan Getz and Astrid Gilberto. The 28-year-old O'Brien played a dance instructor who teaches college students how to shake it. Nancy Sinatra in that one too. Number 7, she had some assorted other TV roles. She did a musical number on the Dick Van Dyke Show episode that you can find on YouTube. But she basically walked away from acting in the mid-1960s, though she did sing with the Harry James Band through 1968. The Singing Skirt endures. Number 8, why'd she walk away from Hollywood by age 30? 2 kids and her general home life. By 1967, that's age 31, O'Brien had been married and divorced 4 times. She claimed her work contributed to the end of at least 2 of them, not sure about the other 2, and she didn't get married again until 1979 when she married a lieutenant colonel and stayed married to him until he died in 2004. Number 9, her post-Hollywood career, managing Hilton hotel chains, and she did that work very successfully apparently. Number 10, Joan O'Brien, still kicking, age 86. And we'll see her again in Season 8's The Case of the Lover's Gamble. Our Perry for this episode reveals something about the guy's safe. This guy just has guns available to him. Okay.
Trading guns is tampering with evidence.
Evidence of what? Oh, don't worry, I'll take precautions. But think how surprised someone will be if they try to catch Betty with a hat box that contains a certain stolen gun.
If you leave a weapon with Perry, if Perry's your lure, don't be surprised if it ends up embroiled in some kind of shenanigans. You figure Perry will be able to get the gun out of trouble. I would just expect to be called into a courtroom for a case that you knew nothing about when you gave him the gun. Our theme for this episode, skirts. A little bit of figurative language fun. The word skirt, as used in the title, it's an example of what we call metonymy. The skirt's not literally singing, although that would be interesting. It's the person wearing the skirt who's doing the singing. So when you sub out the literal person or thing and replace it with something closely related to it, you've got metonymy. Here we go. We've got 4 skirts in the episode. We've got Sadie, played by Allison Hayes. The good girl with the sick mom who's been sucked into a nefarious world of big barns, big bucks, and big schnooks.
I went over to the club and I noticed her hat box was still there, so I put the gun in it. Oh, Betty, honey, I'm so awful sorry.
Then we've got Betty Roberts. Good luck, not much. Singing, we never hear it. And man, she's hanging out with a dude who's bad luck himself.
What are you talking about? Manny, what's the matter with you?
Not a thing. I'm finally going to be free, that's all. This is it, gorgeous. 2 kings and it's all over with.
Then we've got Vivian Ennis. Let's get her statement of purpose.
I'll get that money back. I am warning you, I'll get back every penny of it.
And fourth, we can't forget Della. She's got some warnings about Miss Betty. True, Della, but look at the dudes in this episode. George takes advantage of Sadie's need to get her to frame her coworker. Betty's drawn into the psychological masochism of some dope who squanders $60,000 so he can stop being an alcoholic married to somebody. I'm not really sure what's going on there. And Vivian, man, Slim, Gowrie, Manning, not a winner in the bunch. Della, she's got Perry. We know with a boss like that. I don't think we've ever seen Della in pants up to this point in the show, have we? Okay, it's time to hear a Perry proverb. Perry knows a good line when he hears it, especially when it's a proverb that rings truer from his lips than from the person who originally said it. Here's Perry pulling an Enclitus and bestowing blessings on Betty and Manny.
I like everybody to be happy.
I dig Perry. You really do like everyone to be happy. So why don't you get Betty out of Dodge where she can't see Manny again? That's all I'm saying. Now, it's time to grab a swig from the water cooler.
You know, there
is one thing I don't understand.
Go on, Paul.
Each episode in the water cooler, we give you deleted scenes, material that for some reason didn't quite make the episode's final cut. Our first one comes from listener Tom Wiltshire. When Paul searches Betty Roberts' apartment, he finds a roast chicken in the icebox. And given his well-documented penchant for food, he sits down to eat it. Then when Trag knocks on the door, he hides the bird in his voluminous detective's trench coat and skips out the window, clutching a quart of milk. Delightful. Number 2, Perry swaps guns in court without anyone noticing, sending Berger into a tizzy when Perry calls Berger on the serial number discrepancy. And then number 3, Perry starts adopting other George and Clytus attributes. He pays Della's mother's medical bills. He starts holding a weekly poker match in the law library. Draw poker only. He asks Betty to sing in gratitude for him setting her up with Manny. And then there's the inevitable Slim George Redux moment where Perry goes after Paul for bungling another assignment. You ruined my office, my practice. You ruined my reputation. And scene. Paul prompts. Last time we asked 2 questions. First, what do you think Mavis Mead is getting sent to prison for? The pod's newest detective, listener, and lawyer extraordinaire, Tom Wiltshire, sends us this. Quote, Mavis Mead could have the book thrown at her, as she did to Casper Pedley. Great point, Tom. If she is charged with conspiracy. In 1959 Cali, any co-conspirator can be charged with any crime committed by any other co-conspirator for furtherance of the conspiracy. For Mavis, that includes innumerable counts of tax evasion, money laundering, bulk cash smuggling, and any other crime associated with the criminal enterprise, even murder. In addition, her own perjury, false statements to law enforcement officers, obstruction of justice, and her own likely tax evasion, her fraudulent impersonation of Gladys Doyle in leasing the cabin, could also be thrown into the mix. However, if she churns state's evidence, likely her criminal counts might be reduced, as well as her sentencing. And then Tom ends by saying that he can see Mavis entering the witness protection program and stalking Pretty Boy Perry at the edge of particular episodes. I myself am going through season 5 right now, Tom, with David Bowie Gideon, and those episodes would have been so much better if it were Mavis Mead as the fifth wheel rather than David. And then we had another Paul prompt involving the case of Della's distracting dessert. Just what is our gal Friday noshing on at the restaurant? Again, Tom comes to the rescue. He writes, quote, Della and Perry have the same dishes in front of them. Perry's is obscured by the roses, but it looks to be the same as Della's. The serving dishes look like lined shrimp cocktail glasses that often hold shrimp, caviar or crab, and a glass liner resting over crushed ice and centered by stainless steel rings resting on the rims of the outer bowls. Rather than shrimp, Della's and Perry's liners appeared to be holding chilled fruit cocktails composed of melon balls and green grapes. Man, that's as good a guess as I've heard, Tom. That's just excellent work. Now, let's share a few listener letters. I heard from Matthew this week, who writes, I've enjoyed your podcast for a while and wanted to respond to a question you asked about listeners who enjoyed Perry Mason with their families. My grandma Betty introduced me to Perry over 30 years ago when I was young. Our tradition was for me to watch the Atlanta Braves in the back of the house with my granddad and then come to the front for the late local news, Mama's Family, and Perry Mason. While my 9-year-old brain didn't always solve the case, hanging out with my grandma is a memory I will always treasure. My wife and I have 3 kids. The older 2 are 15 and 13, and they begged me to let them watch Perry Mason. We've watched about 8 episodes from season 1 so far, and they're just as hooked as I was 30 years ago. They never met Grandma Betty, but the connection I have across the generations is a treasure. What a fantastic note, Matthew. Thank you so much. And then April, longtime listener, writes in about the case of the mythical monkeys. This is one of my favorite episodes. I'm a big fan of Kai Wynn, a.k.a. Louise Fletcher, a.k.a. Gladys Doyle. I'd only known of Louise Fletcher through Deep Space Nine, so I was amazed to find the younger Fletcher in this, her first of 2 Perry Mason roles. And I love the way they say Gladys Doyle so many times.
Retained by Gladys Doyle.
Why be so cagey? Why not just say Gladys Doyle?
Gladys Doyle? Yes, Gladys Doyle.
She's in competition with Doris Stefanik in the case of the haunted husband from season 1 with the number of times her name is said in the episode. Great point, April. Thank you for writing in, April. Is there something about this episode you'd like to comment on or correct? I love listener letters. So, as always, write to me at theperrypod@gmail.com. All PerryPod episodes are available via Spotify and YouTube as well as iTunes. Join us next time when we get to make a bunch of donkey jokes. It's the case of the bashful burro. Until then, this is Jonathan Searcy saying, keep on walking! That Park Avenue beat!